Welcome back to Third Rate Content. Today it's a rolling start, part 2 of our Richard's Castle video, and we're going to be visiting Richard's Castle, the castle. So buckle up and I'll see you out there. All right here. But anyway, let's go castle crashing. So, on the way into the castle, this would have been the moat. It's just like a dugout area now. I don't know if it had water in it, but a lot of moats didn't. Some of them were just like an earthwork to hinder you getting close to the walls. This is a remaining part of the gatehouse. So it would have been on both sides. Yeah, and we're just on the moat side of the keep here. The keep just up here. Just giving you an idea of the drop and the severity of the ascent if you were thinking of attacking this castle. Yeah, it's like something out of a fairy tale down here. But then so many places that we visit on Third Rate Content are fairy tale-esque, magical-esque, legendary-esque, folk tale full. You know, you got it all going on, but we're so lucky to have all this on our doorstep, really. That tree has definitely got the look, if you know what I mean, fairy tale style. I wouldn't be surprised if it started talking right now. Of course, the guards who were on duty would have had to relieve themselves, and this was the garderobe, another word for privy or toilet. Not plumbed in, just used to just sort of drop down. A very pleasant thought. But this castle ruins, very interesting, but what makes it even more interesting is that it was a Norman castle. There's loads of them around the UK. But this one was a Norman castle that was built 15 years before the Norman conquest. So how did that happen? Well, find out and keep listening because I'll tell you. Richard Schroob, or Fitz Scrob, was a Norman knight who was friends with Saxon King Edward the Confessor, the last true king of the Saxons before the Norman conquest. Yeah, it is actually thought that Richard's castle was built in 1051. Yeah, it looks like all the wildlife has been cut back in recent weeks, which makes visiting here a lot easier. And, you know, you can envisage the castle a lot better than if it was all covered in nettles and whatnot. Because this time of year, middle of June, things do tend to grow and grow and grow. Yeah, we're just standing up on what would have been Richard's castle's walls. But you can see where the inner bailey would have been. The walls, the moat, and then just over here you can actually see the church just peeking out through the trees. The church was built after Richard's castle, you know, right next door. But one of the conditions of them building the church there was that they weren't allowed to build it any higher because the residents of the castle didn't want common people looking into the castle, you know, and looking down on, you know, on the what really brought the village to this area. And you can see this kind of channel here. It's been a walkway from on the walls, perhaps, from exterior to the interior. Yeah, the first time I ever heard of Richard's Castle was about 3 years ago. I was actually reading Alfred Watkins' The Old Straight Track, a book about ley lines and not so much about the energy currents of ley lines. It's more about just the straight lines and possible routes of ancient sort of roads and that sort of things with the monuments lined up. And Richard's Castle was mentioned, and when I was reading it, it was before I was doing third rate content properly, if you can call it properly now, but I was like making notes of some of the places that Alfred Watkins was mentioning in his book. I just found it so interesting, the obscure historical sites that he visited, and I was making notes of them, and Richard's Castle was one of them. I'd never heard of it before, but when I heard about a Norman castle pre-conquest, I was like, in Herefordshire, close to me, I was like, I have got to visit that at some point. And then later on, when we started the channel sort of a year later, properly, you know, I'd said to myself, we're going to visit that. And that's when I watched the Left Hand Path video on this place, because he saw the goats walking around here, which we can't see today. They might not even be here now. Probably been here 2 or 3 years ago. But it's just fantastic to actually come here. So thank you, Alfred Watkins, resident of Herefordshire, Alfred Watkins. There is even an Alfred Watkins trail you can follow of sites that he made sort of famous in his timeless book, The Old Straight Track. But I don't think Richard's Castle actually features on the Alfred Watkins trail. I'll see if I can find a picture of it to put up for you. Sadly, I lost the notes years ago. I don't know where I put them, but you'll notice Richard's Castle at the very north of Herefordshire is not on the Watkins Way as its official name, but nearby Wigmore Castle is, which we must visit on third rate content when we get the chance. But Alfred Watkins, as well as being a pioneer with ley lines, was also a pioneer in photography, and he would have been remembered even if he hadn't thought of the ley line theory for being some of the innovations in photography and the hardware were his. So anyway, on with the film. Yeah, some more of the medieval walls that remain. I did talk to some locals when I was making my way up here, and I asked them directions, and they said, oh, you're visiting the castle? And the chap said, yeah, there's all 2 blocks of it left. He was exaggerating a bit, but he wasn't far off. There isn't a lot left, but if you've got an imagination, you can definitely sort of recreate it in your mind. You can just look at this picture, and that's kind of where we're going up there. Yeah, there were thought to be 5 of these pre-conquest Norman Motte and Bailey castles in England, and Richard's Castle is the one we're visiting today. But yeah, it's very strange. Apparently the locals here really did not like it when Richard turned up and started building his castle. You know, they were used to Saxon sort of lords, or that type of thing, and then you have some Frenchmen turn up, start building a castle. They didn't like it, but the threats of the Welsh and raids of them were getting more and more dangerous and significant. So, you know, it was protection for this area. Obviously, it worked for the king as well at that time. And that's about one of the biggest pieces of wall we've got left here at Richard's Castle. Yeah, Richard Scrob was actually a housecarl, the very Saxon titled Housecarl for Edward the Confessor. Of course, when Richard Scrob was a housecarl was the Saxon era in England. You know, it was pre-invasion of 1066. Yeah, Edward the Confessor was King of England from 1042 to when he died in 1066, thus triggering the chaos of 1066. The Battle of Hastings also triggered the Norman conquest because Edward the Confessor was exiled in Normandy for several years before coming to England to be king, and he had a friendship network in Normandy which very well could have contained Richard Scrob, who later on was brought over to England at Edward the Confessor's request and would have taken care of royal duties in this part of Herefordshire and Shropshire and Worcestershire, nearby Worcestershire. Feel free to pause and read. Yeah, and this depression here, it's like a sort of bowl, was thought to be, or the keep, stood. It commanded a fantastic and defensively strategic view, but it wasn't that big. Obviously, it would have been about 2 or 3 floors up. But yeah, it was originally wooden. The whole castle, the motte and bailey and wall was wooden, so they could build it quickly, like most early motte and bailey castles were of that format. Stone only came a bit later. Yeah, one of Richard Fitz Schroob's neighbours before the Norman conquest and after, there's horseflies everywhere here, and I just fell in a hole. It was full of nettles. I might quickly show it you for a sort of a comedy reel, but anyway, Richard Fitz Scroob's neighbour was one Wild Edric, who we have talked about a few times on Third Rate Content, and Richard Fitz Scrob had his eye on Wild Edric's land holdings, which were in Shropshire, Herefordshire, and in Worcestershire, because Wild Edric did not take part fighting in the Battle of Hastings, and subsequently his lands were not immediately forfeited to the Normans. But over time his land holdings were being whittled away, and in the end, after a few years, he only had 3 manors left to sustain him and his family. You know, and if he'd been used to living large with his huge land holdings prior to the Norman conquest, this was coming down to earth to reality with a bump, and he didn't like it, and that's what caused him to rebel against William the Conqueror when William the Conqueror did return back to Normandy after the conquest to sort some of his business out over in Normandy, because I imagine people were trying to usurp him. It was horseflies everywhere. It was very much dog eat dog at that time. But Fitz Scroob, he did have sons who continued the Scroob line at this very castle, Richard's Castle. A village did grow up around it, which became a borough, but it didn't live up, to the borough status. And when transport links with Ludlow changed, the road to Ludlow moved past here, leaving it somewhat of a backwater, it never lived up to its potential. Of course, its medieval potential. But these things happen, roads change, transport links change, and Ludlow grew up and was very, very successful. Richard's Castle remained as a lovely little backwater, and I'm very glad about that, because it's been a fantastic place to visit so far. And today, Richard's Castle is split up. It almost feels a disjointed village with All Saints Church lying about a mile away in Shropshire, while St Bartholomew's Church, just further down the A road, is in Herefordshire. So like I say, it's a very disjointed village. Very beautiful. Down there, this is from the keep vantage point. It goes right down. Proper medieval fortress. Yeah, Richard Fitz Schroob's descendants carried on with the castle for a couple of generations, but eventually married into the wealthy and influential Mortimer family. And the Mortimers were real movers and shakers in the medieval period. But the Fitz Schroobs sort of died out and ceased to be it during this sort of time period. And another Fitz Scrob descendant did marry Rosamond Clifford's sister, and Rosamond Clifford was Henry II's mistress. So, you know, they were there in that epoch, there or thereabouts. After being passed to the Talbot and Mortimer family, Richard's castle slowly, over the centuries, ceased to be used and deteriorated slowly over the centuries. And a survey was carried out in 1540 by Leyland, and the castle is reported as standing mainly. It was ruinous, but it was passed on through marriages, and the property passed through several hands until it came into the possession of the Sawney family, who have held it for 370 years. Although a ruin by the 17th century, there was a clash between parliamentarians and royalists at Richard's castle in the English Civil War. It's very green and luscious at the moment. You can still see the stones or the rocks that actually make up the keep. It's just a suggestion of them here in the middle of June. Yeah, I actually just, somehow I could just really imagine the Normans just coming down here in their chainmail, you know, in their helmets with the bit in the middle of the nose. The correct name is, of course, nasal helmet, thus named because of the projecting bar that comes down the centre of the helmet, protecting the centre of the face, and it was used from the 9th century until the 13th. Just basically like right out of Robin of Sherwood, and stepping on these stones, because they're just made for one. You know what I mean? They're awesome. They're pretty good for keeping your grip on as well. So yeah. Talking about that, Richard Scrob was thought to be the sheriff of Worcester between 1051 and 1065, I think it was, because Richard Scrob was never mentioned after 1067, so it's thought he died around this time. His sons took over. But the sheriff position was originally a Saxon title, although it carried on into the Norman period, you know, Sheriff of Nottingham and all that. Sheriff was a Saxon sort of role, administrative post. And Richard Scrob was the Sheriff of Worcester, they'd say. So thank you for joining me today on our visit to Richard's Castle in Herefordshire. Our first ever Herefordshire video, and I've got literally horse flies. Every time I hold my camera somewhere, horse flies are landing on it. It's a beautiful place here at Richard's Castle, but it's infested with horseflies. So I might be going home with a few lumps after this video. And I did fall in a pit full of nettles. I'm being a bit dramatic, but I did get stung several times. But anyway, these are the prices you pay for visiting wonderful, historic, mystical, magical, folkloric, legendary places here on Third Rate Content. Shropshire, Herefordshire, Wales, you name it, we'll visit it. But we've got loads of places to visit in Herefordshire. Hope we're going to be coming back here soon, including Lambston, Hereford, and so many churches. And we might even do part of the Alfred Watkins trail in future. Who knows? So much to do and so little time. But anyway, it's been a fantastic adventure today. Thanks for joining me on Third Rate Content. If I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you've got something to say and you want to chat, and hit the notification bell if you want to stay up to date on all Third Rate Content's goings on. Oh, I got all that out. But anyway, that's everything. If I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. I've probably already said that. Bye-bye. Thank you.